Hey there guys, so Chris Eubank Jr. is going to be defending his IBO Supermiddleweight title against former three-time world champion Arthur Abraham. Now, I'm going to be as quick and as bold with this prediction as possible. I'm picking Chris Eubank Jr. to win this fight. I think he's going to outbox Arthur Abraham. I think that Chris Eubank Jr.'s style is a nightmare for Arthur Abraham's style. And not only that, Arthur Abraham, now he's a fighter that I've been watching for years. I'm a big fan of the guy. I really do like Arthur Abraham. But the issue is here, in my opinion, he's considerably past his prime. He's shot worn. He's been in a lot of back and forth fights that I think have taken a lot out of him. He's been stopped against Robert Stieglitz in their second fight. That was in 4 rounds. He was also completely shut out last year by Gilberto Ramirez. They fought, and Gilberto Ramirez, in my opinion, won every single round of that fight. And Arthur Abraham, to me, he really truly looked like an old man in that fight. Now, in my opinion, Arthur Abraham was at his prime from, I'd say, 2006 to 2009, when he was middleweight champion. I believe he had something like 11 title defenses and won most of them by knockout. He was a very, very menacing and imposing middleweight. He was very strong, he was very powerful, very, very aggressive, and he had such a ring presence as a middleweight champion. He was so strong and powerful and compact, and a lot of guys he just overpowered. However, when he moved up to super middleweight in 2009, he never really took that power up with him. I mean, a lot of his fights went the distance. He was struggling with the height and reach of some of these guys, and I really don't think that super middleweight was a division that suited him. He didn't really transition between weights very well, and you see the results of that. I mean, you got guys like Robin Krasniqi going 12 rounds in a close fight. He's been 12 rounds against people like Giovanni Di Caroli. He got outboxed by Carl Froch. He was losing to Andre Dirrell before he got disqualified. He lost to Andre Ward. So clearly, super middleweight, although he's a commendable fighter at super middleweight, he isn't an elite fighter at super middleweight. He just doesn't really have the size. And going into this Chris Eubank Jr. fight, Arthur Abraham's style, where he has the tight guard, the conventional stance, he looks to try and tire you out by making you hit the guard. And it's kind of like his version of the rope-a-dope. He stands there with his hands up, looking to block punches, and then he'll catch you when you're starting to tire. When you've punched yourself out, and he looks to try and bring the heat late in fights. That's the way that Arthur Abraham fights. He's a very, very he's quite cute that way. He'll tuck up and he'll implore you to throw punches, and then he'll catch you once you've thrown your combination. He'll catch you in between combinations, things like that. But the problem is, when you get used to fighting that style, you can get used to being a bit lazy. And while he's tucked up behind that guard, a fighter like Eubank, who drops his hands and who moves his head and who throws a heck of a lot of hooks and uppercuts, I think Eubank will be catching him with hooks to the body. He'll be hitting him with uppercuts through the guard. He'll be making Arthur Abraham miss. When Abraham starts to get desperate in the fight because he knows he's behind, he'll start to get a bit wild. He'll be throwing wide punches, and that'll just leave him open for more counters. And I've got a feeling that Chris Eubank Jr. is going to handily outbox and outclass Abraham. And if Eubank is on point with his offense, he could potentially get a stoppage, although I think the most likely outcome is a decision. But a stoppage is certainly possible. Obviously, if Arthur Abraham decides that he wants to just tuck up and, ride out the storm and go the distance, then he could potentially go the distance. But if he decides to open up a bit, then a stoppage certainly is possible. But either way, I see Eubank Jr. winning the fight. I see him dominating the fight and winning the fight clearly. Here's what I think's happened with this fight. I think Arthur Abraham has, he's thought about his mandatory position with the WBO, because he's the mandatory challenger for Gilberto Ramirez's WBO title. But I think Arthur Abraham understands that he doesn't have a chance of winning a rematch against Ramirez. I mean, the first fight was completely dominant. Abraham didn't win a single round, so I think he understands that there's no point in that rematch. So he's decided to pursue a different route to a title, and he probably feels that fighting Eubank Jr. he has at least a puncher's chance, because Eubank Jr. doesn't have the kind of size or the kind of style that Gilberto Ramirez has, who's a big, tall, 6'3" southpaw who throws a heck of a lot of punches in the ring. I think he probably feels that Eubank Jr. with his style, dropping his hands and stuff like that, he probably feels that he has a puncher's chance at a knockout and a big edge in experience. So that's probably why he's decided to pursue this fight instead. And I forgot to mention also the fight's going to be taking place in London in Wembley Arena, I think, and it's going to be, like I said, it's going to be for Eubank's IBO title. So Eubank's going to have the home advantage. Arthur Abraham, and I actually mentioned this in one of the first few videos on my channel. I think it's still there. Arthur Abraham is one of these guys who performs a lot better when he's at home. Like when he's fighting in front of a big crowd in Germany, who are cheering for him, he tends to be a lot more comfortable and he tends to box a lot better and he tends to have more energy because he kind of feeds off the crowd. But when he fights overseas, historically, Abraham hasn't done that well when he fights overseas. I think the only time that he performed at world level overseas, the only time he actually did a good job was when he fought Edison Miranda. That was over in Florida, I think. But I think that was because Abraham was really, really determined to avenge getting his jaw broken in the first fight. He really wanted to knock Miranda out. And that was like Arthur Abraham at his prime. That was back when he was the middleweight champion. So I think he was a lot better back then. But since that fight, traveling overseas, he hasn't really performed that well overseas. He's done a lot better at home. So I think a lot is going against Abraham here. I think this is the wrong time for him to take this fight. I think Eubank Jr. is going to outbox him. I think the youth, the energy, the athleticism of Eubank, the fact that Eubank is getting better every fight, I think he's going to school Abraham and I think he's going to destroy him. I really do. Obviously it would be nice if Abraham proves me wrong, because I like Arthur Abraham, and it'll be a good way to end his career if he can win this fight, because he has said he's not too far from retirement. So we'll see what happens here. But I'm expecting Eubank Jr. to win, and hopefully we get to see Eubank Jr. against someone like George Groves, who recently won the WBA title. That's a very good fight. The two guys have sparred in the past, so they have history. And obviously, James DeGale and Eubank, those two really don't like each other. They have a bit of a domestic rivalry going on Twitter and whatnot. So I'd like to see that fight, James DeGale versus Eubank. I don't know if that IBO belt will mean much to those guys, but it's better than nothing, isn't it? So, but anyway, I'm picking Eubank Jr. to win, either by a wide decision or a late stoppage. Let me know what you guys think, and thanks for watching.